You have to walk the talk. You have to be authentic as a leader. If you're not doing it, they see that.
It is entirely universal. There's other people who are going through this.
For me, a great leader needs to be able to marry three things: vision, systems, and people.
Welcome to Leadership Moments. If this is your first time, and if you are returning, thank you for your support.
This show is about leaders from all walks of life, leadership tips, and maybe even a little of what you wouldn't expect to help you in leadership.
We would appreciate it if you tell someone else about our podcast as we strive to support all leaders that want to just be better.
Let's get on with the show. Welcome, everyone, to Leadership Moments podcast. We are here today with Scott Doyne, who is a certified professional coach, author, keynote speaker, and former sports media executive specializing in career transitions for emerging and executive leaders in the sports and the tech and the media industries. His debut best-selling book, which is so incredible, Exploring the Midlife Career Crisis, a guide to navigating the 4 stages of career transition. And I have the privilege to spend time with Scott, and you are going to get to do that today as well. So we're going to welcome Scott and give him a big welcome. But just a little bit of additional information. Scott had a 30-year career in sports, media, and tech. And he is now with us, sharing with him not only certainly what he's learned through his professional career, but now that he's gone and become an executive coach, what he is learning through that process, as well as all of the amazing nuggets that he shares with us in his book. So we're going to welcome him on right now. Hey, Scott, it's so fantastic to have you with us today. And, the topic we're talking about is something that I know is on the minds of many folks I've spoken to personally and professionally, but certainly also, I think very real in the world and the transition that's going on professionally, just in corporate America and other industries as well. So I'd love for you just to, talk a little bit about why did you write this book?
Thanks, Tracy, and I really appreciate being here today. I really love my new career. I am a certified career coach. I spend a lot of one-on-one time with people, but I also want to democratize some of those skills, tools, methodologies to as many people as possible. Not everybody is ready for a coach, wants to have a coach, can afford a coach, and so a lot of the methodologies that are in the book, along with my own personal transformation, hopefully that's a self-serve model for people that want to maybe explore on their own in privacy. And then at that point, maybe they have some confidence to reach out for assistance from others.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you've had a very successful career in sports media. I certainly rattled off all of the accolades about your bio and all the great things you've done. But tell me and the audience just a little bit about what made you become a certified career coach. What was that impetus?
Yeah, it was a magical moment, but it was set up by a couple of steps in advance that I describe in the book, and I'll share with you now. One was I was in the cable television business that was challenged. Like a lot of industries right now, there's disruption. And I was running a part of the business, a research organization where I knew the metrics. I knew what was going on with the industry, with our company, with our business. And so I had awareness of the trends. The second thing was I had a colleague who I respected a ton that was laid off. And I figured if she could get let go, then it could be my turn one of these days. Beyond that, I started journaling. I think journaling is probably the next best thing to coaching, to just getting some stuff out of your head. And then the final light bulb was I was in a session with an executive coach. And in that session, I gained some clarity about my own situation and how I wanted to proceed. And at the same time, I was looking at them and seeing myself through their lens and thinking, I think I could do that. And that really led me down a path of training. Even in advance of my layoff, I was training to become a coach and learning about what that meant. And every step of the way, I loved it more and more, and it suited me. I was always the type of manager that wanted to help people help themselves. And that's a lot of what coaching is being a partner in the process, asking good questions, providing some tools and frameworks. But it's really on, my clients or my partner or my staff to make the most of their own situation.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about this transition. You've been through one. I know I have. And, something that we spoke about when we first met was how hard it is, how really hard it is. And the reason I bring this up is just this last week, as you know, I was at a conference, and one of the conversations was with someone who's actually going through a transition. And all of us, the first thing is we identify ourselves with a title, with a career. And what I really love about your book is, phrasing it up as, this midlife crisis or this career transition. And there's so many emotions that go with that, Scott. So can you just tell us, just from the lens through some of your clients, maybe some of the things that you've been through, one, what do you see? And then secondly, what advice do you have for our audience around some of that?
Yeah, it is quite a spectrum. I've met with tons of people, immediately after layoff, and it's a range of emotions. And in some, there is some aspect of liberation. So some people do see the sunny side up, the bright side, the silver lining, and that's their personal situation that allows them to do that. And then there's people that are angry, they're mad, they're resentful. And in all of that, I think it's important to know is valid. And you can't tell somebody else how to feel. So I think sympathy or empathy, is an important step if you know somebody that's going through this process. Because what I've asked people is, what do you want people to say? And I think validating their value is important. It's not about you, but it still feels like it's about you. So validating their value to what they did provide the organization, but validating their feelings as well. Whatever they're feeling is okay. On the advice side, this is where I see people come into my computer every day or meet in person. It's important to let those feelings out. Venting is okay. Doing it in a one-on-one private situation is very different than venting on LinkedIn or venting maybe subconsciously in your interview process for what you're trying to find next. So I'd rather you let it out with me. I'll be there, I'll listen. And I think that's the other part that's become more obvious to me is not everybody has somebody in their world that will listen without judgment. And so if you can be that for somebody else, do that. They don't necessarily need advice. I know advice is very sort of societally, driven. We're sort of taught to help people. And helping people doesn't have to be advice. You don't know their situation. You don't know their motivation. But if you can first validate their value, validate their feelings, and listen, it's a heck of a start.
Yeah. And something that I wanted, to speak to you about, because I'm sure just based on our age, we probably know a lot of people that are going through some form of transformation, transition, whether that be voluntary or involuntary, right? I'm curious, how do you help them get started? Like, because it happens, and I think most people, to your point, are either liberated or they panicked, right? The best thing you can do is go to a coach. You and I both know that, right? But again, not everybody does that. So how do they get started in this process?
Yeah. So let's say we've done the first part. Let the venting out. Some exercises I work with early on with people are designed to get people out of their head. You've known this one path. You have that identity, like you said, with your title or your role or your company. It's all you've thought about. And that's just how things happen, right? You end up with blinders on to some degree. So if you can go through a process, whether it's journaling or talking to a coach, or I use the Ikigai method a lot in early exploration, it's not about what you're going to do next. Some people have that certainty. It's pretty rare. The way I change that question is, what might you try next? How might you learn more about that space where you have an interest? And this is if you have some time to explore. If you don't have time to explore, I think assessments can be a little bit of a quicker process. Roll through an EQ assessment, a DISC assessment, Clifton Strengths, see what those say, and it might give you some clues to where you might go next. And I think that process of involving the journal, the coach, the assessment, talking it out with people can sometimes free your brain, and you become a little more open-minded and get past some of the hurt and move towards something you do want.
Right, totally. Yeah. I think that's really, really good advice. And you said something, and I had a little chuckle because during my transition, I ended up, starting my singing career and, writing my, songs. And one of my songs is called Get Out of My Head.
How about that?
And it's for that exact reason.
Yeah, it's very difficult. The brain is complicated. And one of the great things about coach training is the neuroscience behind it. And understanding a little bit more about that, first of all, is fascinating. I love psychology. But also then, as I start to apply certain tactics with folks in the right situation, you see the results. And so that's where I can sort of trace back and tell you, right, getting people out of their head, not easy. We all have that voice, but maybe you can change the narrative and maybe you can get some of that out. A lot of times your brain protects you from asking yourself certain questions or even answering them. It's almost like that Excel circular reference where your brain breaks. And, as I get feedback from my clients, I do surveys all the time. A lot of what comes back is working with a partner for a structured approach to career transition. I can work with the greatest product managers, project managers around, right? Very organized people. But when the topic becomes themselves, it's like your brain breaks because it's protecting you in some way. And so thinking about the tools you use to be productive in your professional career, you can use a lot of those same tools to organize your transition plan.
Yeah, Scott, I think that's very valuable advice. I years and years ago, I listened to a TED Talk, and this is what he said, and I've never forgotten it. Would you want to be in the trenches with that person that's in your head? Wow. Right? And I love what you said about the neuroscience behind that, because I think that is the value behind, getting a coach. It's the objectivity, first of all. It's the empathy, which we've spoken about, right? And to your point, I love the way you brought up, hey, first thing is just vent.
Absolutely.
I loved that.
I still have a coach, and I went through my review last year of my accomplishments and my investments, and my investment in my coach. When I looked at what the value was from that, it was almost all mental. That ability when I was in stress mode to get out of stress mode, or to realize I was in stress mode, and then plot my next steps from there.
So now that you're on what I'd say the other side of your career, right? You're a author of an incredible book. You're an executive coach. You've come to the other side. What advice would you have given yourself as you were going through your career?
Wow. I try to stay away from advice, right? I can't be a hypocrite here. If I were to have a coach earlier in my career, let me think about it that way, because it's a good question. What would I have wanted from that coach? And I think patience is probably what I could have used a dose of at certain points. I don't regret anything in my career. It worked out remarkably well. I feel quite privileged for what I was able to not just accomplish, but experience. All I ever wanted to do was work in sports. And I got to do that for 25 years in a variety of capacities with great bosses, great content, great products. So I wouldn't change anything, honestly. But I think what a coach might have provided me at certain times was some self-reflection and awareness of maybe pushing a little too hard, too fast sometimes. And so I think I might have embraced patience a little more.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I do think we all do that to some extent. Yeah, really good advice. And I love the way you framed that up because, as coaches, you're not allowed to give advice. Well,
Oh yeah.
not
Well, and
allowed.
also,
Yeah.
I've taken all these assessments too. And if the audience hasn't seen the Saboteur assessment from Positive Intelligence, I think it's a really good one to just sort of know not your weaknesses, that it's just your character traits. And for me, hyperachiever was always one of them. And so just knowing that doesn't mean it's bad, but I can choose to modify it in certain situations or realize, the depths of that strength or strengths in excess and how that might show up.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. So I know mentorship is really important to both of us. We spoke about that a little bit as well. Talk to me a little bit about, what the value of that has been in your own career and any advice that you might be able to give to someone around, finding a mentor, getting a mentor in their own life if they don't have one today.
Yeah, there's an exercise in the book that I'd bring people's attention to called Personal Board of Advisors. And I think people think about a personal board of directors. I've heard that term in my career. But the difference of what I present is 4 different types. And so when you think about filling your board, it's not all cheerleaders. That's one, right? The number one fan, the people to be on your side. And where you're going through transition, it's nice to have some of those folks in your ear, right? To play off of what else might be in your head. The second one is the straight shooter. This is the tough love. Somebody that tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. That is the person that's going to give you the tough advice, right? A coach is not going to go down that path. The coach might be somebody, I work with people in sports media and technology because that was the path that I was on. And I can be an industry advisor for people because there's certain nuances to certain spaces that we're in. And then the fourth type is somebody that understands your values, that lifelong friend or maybe family member that when you're looking at an opportunity, they're like, I'm not sure that's for you. Like, do you realize, that might go into a space where ethically you're not aligned, and somebody remind you of that. So think about putting people in those buckets and not overloading in any one particular. But I've needed those mentors at different times for different reasons. And it was that straight shooter for me that I went to really a couple years before my layoff. And he was the first one to put it on my radar. At some point, it won't even be your name. It's just a number of the salary that you're making. And so it's not going to be personal, but you want to be ready. I wasn't ready to do anything about it at the time, but it did plant the seed that when I had that other light bulb of my colleague getting laid off, it was time for me to prepare to be my own advocate.
And it is interesting, you don't always want to go to your straight shooter.
No. When you're vulnerable, I don't.
And I know exactly who my straight shooter is, by the way. And it's so funny because I'm like, do I really want to get that feedback today? I don't know if I'm in the right headspace for it.
That's it. And I even find myself adapting a little bit to different lanes for different clients. I'm not a mentor or advisor, but we get to know each other pretty well. When all bets are off, I'm always the cheerleader. Like, that's just me. I think the best of everyone. I like everybody. And so I know the people that come to me when they need that, reinforcement, confidence, or hug.
Yeah. Well, we all do. I mean, it's a very, very important role. And a lot of that is because of our own head space, as you say. And sometimes we just need to have that validated by someone else, especially when you're going through times like this.
Yeah, and it feels good to give it too.
Yeah, it feels great to give it. It really does. And it's also great to see when you have given it, how you've actually helped that person get their confidence back. Because one of the big things that happens in any crisis like this, whether it's a transition or a layoff or whatever it is there is a confidence gap that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a lot of people every day coming to me saying everything's great. This is part of the job, is being there when things aren't great. And I feel honored that I'm welcome in that environment. There's some psychological safety there, and I have to earn that. But having people on your side that can be there and like I said before, not be judgmental, those might be the people at that moment that are best for you.
Yeah, for sure. So we haven't got, to talk about everything that's in the book, because I know there's a lot. But can you share with our audience perhaps just, a couple of really key takeaways that you would like the audience to know that's, hey, here's some advice that's from the actual book?
Yeah. I don't think we can get out of this conversation without talking about networking. To me, we talked about Ikigai for exploration, personal board of advisors to help you make decisions. Networking to me, especially in the industries I've been part of, who you know is more important than what you know. It's not what people want to hear, but it's not a meritocracy in that way. And if you can build up your skills, the importance of networking is not a surprise that I'm bringing up, but the method that I employ is to do it in your own way. To build those relationships organically. You don't have to be bragging about yourself. You don't have to be that person on LinkedIn that's talking about all your achievements. There are ways to do this. And my method for that, especially for people that don't love networking, it's called ICAN, ICAN. And the first step is to identify somebody that you might be able to learn something from. Of course, it might be somebody that could help you get a job at some point if that's what your goal is. But if you think about networking more as a research project, what role do I want? What industry do I want to be in? What's that company like? Come at it from a question basis, identify somebody you can learn from. The C is then connect. How do you connect with somebody? What format, what method is most comfortable for you? And find that thing in common. Is it that you saw them at a conference, or you met them at a panel, or you have the same alma mater, or you worked at the same company? What is that thing you can just sort of remind them that emotionally you are connected? And then A is the ask. This is harder for people, but you can start with easier asks. Ask for advice, ask about their career path, ask their favorite podcast. Those things are asynchronous. And so you're asking less of somebody that you're networking with. And then over time, if a role is posted at their company, now it's not your first time contacting them. That's the end, navigate or next steps. And so identify, connect, ask, and then navigate. And I think if people begin to just go through the process and think a little bit less of it's them in the process, I think you'll get some momentum there. And then that, believe it or not, can become addictive.
I really love that. I can, everyone, because I really love that. In our mentoring program, our leadership mentoring programs for our nonprofit, we do a lot around networking, because many of these folks, are so, as you know, you're in your career, your head's down, you're not thinking about that. And the problem is you can't think about it when you're out looking for a job or when you're out changing your career. It's got to be something that is built into your everyday life and lifestyle and all of that. And I love that, because it's the, who do you want, the identify piece is, who do you want, who are those people, which I love, but I love the way you framed up the connect piece as well. And then also moving through those steps, as I think about, I always call it about cash deposits and withdrawals.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
this, it can't be one-sided,
Yeah.
right? So it's,
I agree.
how do you support them? How do they support you? But that's what I like about what you've said here, because that's essentially what you're saying is, you're going to go through this process. And before you're getting the ask, you've got these, you're finding familiar ground, you're building a connection, it's an emotional attachment to those individuals. So it becomes a relationship, not a networking buddy.
That's right.
Very
I,
important.
I teach a course at Emory University's Guizweta Business School on career navigation and sports media technology. And they get to choose which of these exercises they want to use for themselves. And some of them choose the networking one. And then I ask them afterwards, what is it you learned from the process? Because they have to pick 10 people to reach out to. How are they going to do it? And what are the results? And one of the young women in the class at the end said, the person that saw themselves in me was the most likely to respond. And she was a student athlete, and so she found a student athlete that she wanted to reach out to, an alumnus. But also it could be somebody from your hometown or somebody that went through similar challenges. And that's where I think heart does come into it. And I understand the reciprocation part, but sometimes you're just letting that other person help you. And I do think there's a lot of people that get a lot of value from helping others, and it doesn't mean they always have time for it. It doesn't mean you won't get a response, you'll get a response back from everybody, because that doesn't happen that way. But sometimes it's more about paying it forward in the future, because I don't want that reciprocation to feel like an obligation upon initial contact. If it's a young person or a student, there may not be something obvious that you're providing to that superior, but you might give them that warm fuzzy when they've had a really crappy day. And then over time, you become that person. And it's amazing how fast that switches to graduates that are alumni 2 or 3 years out, that are the people that the students are now reaching out to. And so that's your chance to give back. Is it maybe, that cash register is in aggregate over time, not just for that one relationship.
Yeah. But I really love something, that you said there, because the like-mindedness, it's so funny, because when you started to talk about psychology and neuroscience, I'm like, oh my word, Scott, I got to talk to you about that. I love psychology. I love, and those are the things you find out when you are asking people questions. And you care enough that you actually are interested and curious about who they are and what do they think, and what do they do, and and that's why, and I think we're both like this, and you've said it, like, when you're curious about others and you worry less about yourself, my gosh, the stuff you can learn about people is wonderful. It's fascinating, and that's how you connect.
That's right. And the better you understand them, then you might know what might help them, or what you can offer them.
Yeah. It's so funny, at that conference I spoke about, I had found somebody that, I can reconnect it, should I say, with someone that I hadn't seen for a really long time. And we've been talking for, I don't know, 40 minutes. And he said, so how can I support you? And that really should be one of the questions we ask, right? You can't always, because maybe you don't know how you can support them, but that happens over time. This wasn't someone I just met, but when you have that kind of frame of reference, which is not a selfish one, those relationships become much more natural.
I think so too. And can I offer to rephrase that a little bit?
Please do.
This is part of the fun of learning. I'm 3 years into coaching. I'm not an expert. I'm getting better, and that's fine. But at the same time, little nuances do change things. And even when I'm talking to a prospective client, if you were looking for the perfect partner in this process, what would they provide to you? Right? How can I help you? A lot of people can back away from, right? They don't know. It sounds intimidating. It's like, oh, wow. I actually still get surprised when people ask me that. It's a weird sort of vibe. But, if you've had the Q&A with them already, and you've learned a little bit about what they might need, it's okay to propose something specific. I've heard that you might need, to learn more about the PR world. Would it be helpful if I introduced you to somebody in that space?
I love that, because you've listened. Now you're like, okay, now I think I know how I can help them.
Yeah, and you've taken the fear off of their plate.
That's it. That's exactly right. Or just you're surprised by the question, and you haven't really thought about it. You just actually have.
You haven't thought of it. It stuns you to the point where you're now back in your head. Your limbic mode sort of gets triggered, versus the matchmaking value. If I get to meet with a client or just somebody I'm networking with, and they're a phenomenal candidate, and I get to introduce them to their future hiring manager, and that works out great, how do you think I look?
Totally. Absolutely.
That's a win for everybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, there goes that sound. So hold on, Scott. So I have some fun questions for you.
Okay.
All right. Would you prefer to have a superpower that makes you invisible or a superpower that lets you fly?
I would fly. I think getting to my chosen destination, I love to travel. And to be able to skip time a bit, I think that would be pretty useful.
Never mind the view, right? Imagine the view.
Yeah.
So the next one is, would you rather have the power to read minds or the ability to time travel?
Read minds on that one. Understanding others really is the path to empathy and helping. Not their deepest thoughts, but their motivation. Trying to get people to understand their own motivation is hard enough. And sometimes if you're listening, you might hear something they don't. And so I'll take notes or do a Zoom whiteboard and share with them what they just said. And sometimes that lets them into their thoughts in a way that they didn't even hear.
Wow. That's amazing. That's incredible. All right, last question. Okay. So, do you prefer receiving a handwritten letter or getting surprise gifts?
A surprise handwritten letter is the best.
Yes.
It is. And maybe I'm showing my age a little bit, but I've got a couple cards right around my desk. There's physical evidence of somebody caring in a way that they took time to send that.
You know, it's really interesting you say that, because I can tell you, I can remember every single time that I have received one of those, probably in the last 15 years. Because, you know, you get them. In fact, I received one, I didn't even know where it came from. To this day, I still don't know where it came from. But it said, "You are," and I opened it up and it said, "Amazing." That was it.
Beautiful.
Can you imagine receiving that? And you're like, I didn't even know where this came from. But it's a beautiful thing when someone takes the time, because it takes time to write those notes, you know, and they're always really special and they're always really sincere.
Yeah, that visual positive reinforcement is so powerful.
Yeah, it really, really is. Well, listen, Scott, I know this is not going to be the last time we talk, that's for sure. Well, it definitely wasn't the first time, but it won't be the last. So we'll definitely circle back on some of that neuroscience and the psychology stuff for sure. But for our audience, you know, Scott has got an incredible book out there. You'll get all of his information as well. If you want to reach out to him, you know, if you're looking for any advice, any coaching, as well as, you know, reading a really fantastic book, not only on midlife, you know, sort of what I call career crisis, but transitions just in general, right? And so take the time. I certainly have learned a lot from Scott just by, you know, talking with him, and certainly welcome all of you to do that. It's been great having you on the show. Really great.
Thanks, Tristan. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And again, you know, we'll probably do this in a year or so and see where we all are.
That's the deal.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, please go to leadershipmomentspodcast.com to subscribe to the podcast, or on your favorite player, as well as follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
You can also send us a message on what you like and don't like, or what guest you want us to have on the show.
So until next time,
this is Stacey Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
And I'm Tracy Ann Palmer. Be the change you wish to see in the world.